I think human element is important, and I think even though LeBron's got a ton of will, and clearly he knows that he's got to have confidence in his team for Game 4, I think it's fair to say he knows this is going to be a stretch to go win 4 times in a row. So how does it, human element 3D, not creep in for him, the unknown that stands beyond that buzzer, if this game goes the wrong way tomorrow?
There's no question it's creeping in, Casey. Obviously, LeBron's not going to tell us that. LeBron and Kevin Love, in my opinion, have done their job as the role as being superstars setting the table. They cannot find a committee of guys, Brent, consistently, the George Hills, the Nance, or if it's JR, or if it's Kyle Korver, whoever it is, you need 3 of those guys. Let's face it, Kyrie Irving's gone. He was that third guy that gave, Love and LeBron that extra oomph to get that 1 win last year. Now, how do you get all these new faces, Brent, to play on that kind of level? They've never been there before.
Yeah, that's the interesting point, 3D. If you really think about their roster construct, last year Golden State beats this Cavs team 4-1, and then the roster turnover that they have, and think about maybe some of the deficiencies that this roster represents as opposed to last year and how impactful they could be on offense because of Kyrie and his shot creation and his big moment shot taking. That element completely gone. The inexperience of all the guys that they brought over, and the fact that they have not been part of this history. As much as it's Golden State against Cleveland round 4, Golden State, those guys, most of them, the core of their guys have been around. Last year was KD's first go. But for these inexperienced young players that the Cavs brought in at the trade deadline, it's just not enough for what Golden State represents. And we've seen that play out, along with the Lions 3D, of when we are sitting up here and pontificating about adjustments. How well does Ty Lue know this team? How deep can they go into an offensive or defensive playbook not having this time together? It's nearly an impossible task because they just don't have that connectivity.
Even with all of that, if we're being fair, they're not good enough. They're not. Nobody is.
I want to say that,
but they're not.
Without disrespect, the roster.
No, I'm not trying to disrespect
this
them.
roster.
They're not as talented.
Yes, they cannot compete.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be. It's not. I think LeBron knows that. I mean, they're not as talented. So how much of that will play into his decision, I think, is something fair to ask, because LeBron's sitting here. Look, LeBron wants to win. He wants to win championships. He could take anybody to the finals with the way he played in the East, right? I think we all agree with that. Right. As good as Boston is, LeBron has shown, look what he did this year. Take anybody. But DZ, don't you think he's kind of evaluating this roster during this series, the way LeBron's mind works, going into the offseason saying, okay, how close are we? How much do I believe if I stay that we can win? Isn't this an evaluation process for LeBron?
Casey, LeBron is sitting there, to your point, evaluating, saying, if I stay, I know I have Kevin Love, I know I have a few pieces, can I possibly entice a Paul George or some free agent to come here, versus do I go to L.A., do I go to the Clippers, do I go somewhere else? Now I have to start all over with some young talent. One thing we know about, to your point, LeBron will weigh both sides out very closely before he makes that tough decision.
Well, I think LeBron right now is examining his team and what they could possibly do for Game 4. I don't think it's going beyond that for him. I think he is compartmentalizing what it is that's at stake for them to try to compete harder and better and for a longer period of time in Game 4. After that, we've got a few days. And the Cleveland Cavaliers are in an interesting situation with their roster construct, the 8th pick in the NBA draft coming up. What kind of young talent can you bring in here? Or can you use that as an asset in speaking with LeBron and saying, how do you feel we could complete this roster? Is that an asset that you could possibly use to retool, to find a veteran that comes in to complement what they're doing? So there'll be a lot of work in, let's say, 48 hours if Cleveland is to get swept, with how it is that they're going to think about that. And LeBron will have that time to assess how the front office is looking at the draft, how they're approaching free agency, what their flexibility is with regards to their salary cap, and whether or not one or two players for him in the Eastern Conference, again, to stay in the Eastern Conference, can be an addition to the Cavs to keep them in this position, which is getting back to the finals on his shoulders every year and beating Golden State.
Here's the thing, being fair, and LeBron's, I can't even imagine what goes on in his head, Bones, but I'm thinking just from a much lesser point of view, if this was our last show together here, I would tell you as a professional, and I'm doing this 15 years, yeah, I'd concentrate on the show, but there's no way during every break I wouldn't be thinking about.
Well, this is why
where
Ty
am I gonna
Lue
work,
doesn't
what am I
rest
gonna
him.
do?
This is why Ty Lue plays him 48 minutes.
It's a little different. It's a little different.
At a much bigger level, I would be thinking. I'd be
So
thinking 10 times more, not 10 times less. No.
No, LeBron's been dealing with this since he's been 17, 18 years old, so it's
Okay.
a little different.
Okay.
Versus that, my task is as the leader of this franchise, try to get one win.
Okay. Yeah.
That's my only focus.
Okay.
And obviously, for people like you, as soon as I would lose that game, then that's going to be the first
Humans?
question.
Yes.
First question.
No, I would say 3D's right. LeBron James
Yeah.
is locked into the competition,
Trying,
not,
yes.
not the
Understand.
camaraderie, which
Yes.
is
I got
what
you.
we do.
Yes.
You know,
Right.
like
No.
he-
I'm.
No, he wants.
This isn't.
He wants to like I said, compartmentalize. He's one of the all-time greats for that reason.
Right.
No matter what's going on, whether that be injury to him or somebody else on the roster, whether it be somebody is not playing, he's still going to bring
Right.
his monumental efforts to the floor, and then afterwards, all of that talk is upcoming. But it's still about Game 4.
Let me ask you one quick one before we get to break. For the rest of his team, the guys that are in that room, how much is their will equal to a guy like LeBron, or can you? Because we look at, we were talking about this in the back. You get into a Game 4, I think a lot of people around the arena today talking about the same thing, and that is if the Warriors put it on them early, maybe the Cavs go away. They're not as good. We know LeBron's not going to give up fighting, but how about the rest of the team? How does he get – a lot of these guys, to your point, Bones, have never been through this
That
before.
is a concern for me.
Right?
Dennis and I have talked about this a lot, about the I don't like the cliche term, but it is. It's a buy-in. It's an emotional buy-in.
Sure.
They haven't been through the chapters of this battle between Golden State and Cleveland. And so for those guys, how much emotional equity did they have in the game, 3D? They know what they're up against. I do want to mention Rodney Hood stepped up in a massive way, and I think deep down as players we're thrilled for what Rodney was able to do given the minutes. But for the rest of these guys, there are some guys that have been with LeBron that will want to go and fight for him. These other guys, you wonder how they're going to approach this Game 4 with the high-pressure stakes of being down 3-0.